Welcome to another edition of Something Came from Baltimore. I'm your host, Tom Gouker, and tonight we're premiering the first of 6 episodes called the R&B Teddy Bears. The Teddy Bears are amazing, talented soul singers who connected emotionally to women, but the guys liked them also. I interview musicians for the last year just to get their opinion on these guys. And it's funny how I can hear their passion about these artists, but times have passed and I can hear the musicians struggle for names, dates, and times, even including me. But one thing we can remember is that these artists are special and one of a kind. The R&B Teddy Bears are Gerald Levert, Marvin Gaye, Isaac Hayes, Barry White, Teddy Pendergrass, and Luther Vandross. During our conversations, other names popped up: Will Downing, Peebo Bryson, Kevin Mahogany, Gregory Porter, Solomon Burke, and Nat King Cole were all mentioned. But we all agree that the 6 Teddy Bears of R&B are royalty. Tonight, our musician we're talking about is Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert performed with his family group called Levert and had tons of hits. He's a leader of the New Jack Swing. Gerald went on to a super successful R&B career. His life was cut short at the age of 40, and we have his legacy of music to remember him by. Listening to the following artists chat about Gerald Levert, blues singer Kelly Bell from the Kelly Bell Band, jazz vocalist Ed Turner, genre-busting singer-songwriter Darnell Miller, blues singer and musician Vanessa Collier, jazz pianist Lafayette Gilchrist, and the funk master Duke Benjamin. I'm so excited about this project. Stick around after the interview to hear my top 10 songs of Gerald Levert. Ladies and gentlemen, R&B Teddy Bear, the icon Gerald Levert. On the pop charts, Levert just felt like a one-hit wonder with that big monster hit, Casanova. Casanova. The group could not sustain a crossover radio following, but it didn't matter. Levert was becoming R&B royalty on the R&B charts with one hit after another, touring the world with Beatlemania type of loyal fan base. And each BET concert experience showed that these young guys were real showmen.
Like a family. Well, right now, these guys are a family. They're incredible. Here to show you some of the Dale's favorite tunes, Levert!
In the R&B world, Levert was racking up one number one after another, and they had radio hits from songs that weren't even released as singles. Their brand and image fit perfectly in the New Jack Swing era, and the group comprised of 2/3 of Levert, Gerald and Sean, who are the sons of OJ's Eddie Levert and Mark Gordon. Groomed for success and signed with Atlantic Records, R&B hits exploded one after another, starting with Pop 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 Goes My Mind. La, 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 la. Atlantic Records wanted some of that Levert magic, and they started writing for other artists like Anita Baker, Whatever It Takes. Barry White, Practice What You Preach. And they put their Levert stamp on the song Written All Over Your Face. Share the Mic with Troop, singing on the OJ's tune For the Love of Money and Living for the Weekend on the now legendary 1991 New Jack City soundtrack. I love you, it's true. Won't you be mine forever? In some ways, the group Levert was one of the major faces of R&B at the time. They got so big that they had to explode into pieces. Next to Luther Vandross, Gerald Levert was the face of the Teddy Bear love, whispering and winning all the women's hearts, and just cool enough to hang out with all the guys. I won't settle for less than true love at its best. I'll keep on It was his big voice, his on-point look, and his all eyes on me charisma, and you could not forget his talent for writing some classic songs. All of this made Gerald Levert a star in his own right. Mark Gordon would go into the studio and produce and write big hits. Sean Levert, who had this boy next door innocence about him, released a hit album, but basically stayed close to his brother and would appear on stage to sing the old Levert songs at the end of each show.
Hey, man. Did you enjoy that? That's a heck of a song, man. Did you like that? Hey, that's a heck of a song, man.
In the early 2000s, the music industry was changing, and one of the first departments to get downsized was the R&B division of major labels. Belts tightened as the label had forgotten that R&B had an audience, and they would focus more on one-hit wonders and rap artists because they were cheaper to produce and market. Gerald Levert was a great collaborator, having hits with his dad and this supergroup, LSG. He was the L in the group, and the S was Keith Sweat, and G was Johnny Gill. He had that masculine teddy bear voice for all the female stars at the time. Kelly Price, Yolanda Adams, Missy Elliott, Vanessa Williams, and Tina Marie. In late 2005, Gerald decided to release a collection of some of his favorite duets on an album called Voices. And to kick off the album was a new song by Levert. As the song says, the boys are back, Levert is back.
Levert is back. Them boys is back. My boys is back. And we like it, baby.
Talks turned to action and the boys are back. Levert, now grown men and a lot of love and history behind them, are recording together. Levert had the finishing touches on a solo album which would later become In My Songs, a duet album with his dad, a book deal, a live play called Confessions, aka Casino, with Kelly Price, and was working to get fit with his fans on a reality show. At 40, Gerald Levert had 20 years in the business as an A-list entertainer, and the man was busy, and he was branching out his brand and finishing up a tour in South Africa with his father, and then everything abruptly stopped.
What do you have to do? What homework you have to do?
Spelling and math.
So why is you home doing your homework?
Cause you wanted me to come here.
On November 10th, 2006, Gerald Levert died of a heart attack. The autopsy reported a cocktail of prescription narcotics and over-the-counter drugs. The lethal combination was connected to a shoulder problem, an Achilles tendon issue, anxiety, and trying to get over pneumonia that he caught on a recent South America tour. Luther Vandross passed the year before, and now Gerald Levert passed. The two superstars of R&B that shaped a generation of music were gone. My first thing about Gerald Levert, putting him on the radar, was when I was watching those daily video shows. It was the R&B show. It wasn't the...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Pull Over by Levert came on. And these guys were dancing up a storm, and the song rocks. It's one of my favorite songs of theirs, but that's where I was on the mark. And I'm like, okay, who are these guys?
Right.
And I was a fan, a super fan ever since.
One of my favorite, if not my favorite Gerald Levert song of all time is Answering Service. It's just something melodically about the song. There's something orchestrally, musically, everything about that song. In that song, to me, it feels like the song itself is crying. And that sounds a little bit like deep, but it's just there's such emotion in that song. And then when you see the video, it's like it just takes it to another level. And I just remember, you know, when it was I heard on the radio that he had passed, and that, you know, that's the first song they played. Really, whenever I think of like Gerald Levert and who he was and how great he was, like to me, it's such a great written song, and he's such an underrated songwriter. I mean, he has a connection with someone else on my list, you know, and I don't think people really know, but such a great songwriter. Great songwriter.
The rumba don't stop. Say, hey, what is that? It's just an attitude, a smooth and crazy way to act. And when the wickies get wild, they do it in a rumba don't style. It's just a freak in a tight skirt. You know the ones putting down the work, but never touch a big boy and smile. When you do it in a rumba don't style.
But what impressed me about him, man, because that New Jack thing, and see, we almost have completely lost it now. Because the New Jack thing had singers like Aaron Hall, Keith Sweat. That music was missing that masculine male thing. You had a lot of little whiny guys singing a lot of that New Jack thing. I always thought, man, his voice just natural with that beat. You know, his voice made me believe that beat.
I've been sleeping with you. You've been sleeping with me. And you've been stroking him and loving him, kissing him and hugging him. Oh, wow, yeah. You've been creeping with him. He's been sexing your friend. And I got you thinking about it. Girl, I think that I should let you know that I'm gonna have to up and go.
Thinking about it off the Love and Consequences album, because it's ghetto, because I'm ghetto. Some people, they use the word ghetto as a bad thing or lower or whatever. It's ghetto is also what you are. There's no right or no wrong to it. There's an attitude about it. There's a chemistry about it. So thinking about it is when Gerald Levert went ghetto, and I love it.
Hold up. Let me get a drink of your water. I'm trying to wear me out.
And it's you that I need, and all of that, and it's too good. I don't deserve it kind of love. The girl I'm calling in sick to work kind of love. That sweaty, funky dope kind of love. That's what you got.
You Got That Love, another song that's ghetto, and I just love it. Stroke of Genius is a good album, and that song, that song is my top 3 because, you know, I'm ghetto. You Got That Love. It's honest, and a good saint is an honest saint. Right. You want to be married or partnered to somebody to the lyrics of You Got That Love.
It's gonna be one of them days. I can feel it.
On a day like today, I got out of bed, nothing went my way, trying to find some peace within, but there ain't no rest for a weary man. Everything seemed to get
See, he had that beat. he could balladeer, but he could just throw down, man.
And he really is an icon. I mean, you know, when you can get referenced by a plethora of people, imitate, you know what I mean? He's an icon, and I think he's so underrated. And like you said, I think he would have evolved, you know, because his talent was limitless. He always was relevant. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he really was picking up that mantle that his father had. Like, really, you know.
They never went pop or crossed over, so which is great, but a price comes with that. They never crossed over. So I guess I pretty much answered my own statement. They never crossed over, but they're great. I think most of Levert's body, people don't realize that the group Levert alone has a very decent to large body of work, hits and good songs. You know, you have your hits and then you have your good songs, and when you think of the group Levert, you can't help but think of Gerald Levert. With all due respect to Mark Gordon and Sean, but yeah, like I said, he stuck to his craft and never sold out. So a price came with that, to where he wasn't a superstar. He was definitely an R&B star, but never was a superstar.
Don't you know it's written all over your face? You don't have to say a word. Just smile, 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 smile for me. It's better than any word I've ever heard. It's better than any word I've ever heard.
So the first one was Written All Over Your Face. You know, everybody in the hood knows that song, you know, by the Rude Boys, you know. Come here, he'll sing it. You know what I mean? And then you hear Gerald's voice, not knowing that, you know, he was the writer of that song, you know. And it's just a great song, but a hit. It became a hit that he wrote. And it also became like a song that was kind of copied numerous times, you know, that type of groove.
When I think of Gerald Levert, just like we mentioned on Isaac Hayes, when I think of Gerald Levert, it's black music. He never sold out. He stuck to his craft. A lot of Eddie Levert influence, but definitely not an Eddie Levert copycat. That's what made his stuff so unique. So I love black music. So I absolutely love Gerald Levert. It's a hardcore tie between him and his body of work with the group Levert. It's top 10 favorite stuff ever done in R&B, personally.
Please welcome tonight's host, Levert.
I think of Gerald Levert, I think of underrated songwriter. And although although for this one I didn't have a particular album, it's just a great body of work. And even when thinking about my favorite Gerald songs, I thought about him as a songwriter.
See, Gerald Levert came along in like the late '80s, early '90s. Ain't much on nothing. Me and Romeo ain't never been friends. Can't you see how much I love? Wanna sing it to you. Time. You sure that wasn't like 85, 86?
Casanova, which to me is the first time I had heard of these beings called Levert and Gerald Levert, and so on and so on, you know. And, you know, that song was like major when it came out, you know what I mean? And everybody's like, yo, you know, it's these big brothers, they hold it down, you know what I mean? Me and Romeo ain't never been friends. What?
Keep telling me this and telling me that. You say once I'm with you, I'll never go back. You say there's a lesson that you wanna teach. Well, here I am, baby. Practice what you preach.
Good writer, wrote for a lot of people too. And Anita Baker, Barry White, and a few one-hit wonders. I mean, the dude got some songs under his belt.
I wanna be a breakfast in bed, and baby I'll be your food, Mr. Too Damn Good to you. 'Cause I'm on a natural high. Everybody's blowing smoke, but girl, you never lie. No, you didn't say that they're just hating their lives. No, they want what I got. It comes one.
When I look at the album that could have broke him into stratosphere, and I think he was being a little more creative, was the G album, and it had "You Are" on it, which was I think his third single, but it also had "Mr. Too Damn Good for You,"
Oh, yeah.
and it had another song on it that was even bigger than "Mr. Too Damn Good for You." It was a great album, and it was, I believe it was like the 1999 2000 area. So it was an aggressive leap because he was getting Love and Consequences and some other stuff that was kind of like,
And he was pushing.
Yeah,
Like, he was
getting hits.
very prolific, very prolific.
Yeah, he was on that mark where, you know, the Beatles had to put an album out every year and a couple singles. Gerald Levert was on that same kind of groove, like where he didn't stop. It was like,
Yeah, he was working.
yeah, he wasn't doing Janet and saying, okay, I'm putting an album out 3 years later. I may come out with another album. You know, he was like, okay, here it is. You know, work, album tour, album tour, album tour.
Then you have Gerald Levert, who is just like different, you know, from just about everybody else. He has a huskiness that you would hear in a Baptist minister, but, you know, but hearing him sing rhythm and blues, and, you know, it's not a taboo. If you put him up there and he was the minister, women would still love him, except they would feel guilty about how they love him, because he's in church. So you take him out of church, you put him on the stage and have him do an R&B song, and then they love him for the reasons that they feel more comfortable with.
Good artist and good writer, good singer too, and a phenomenal live performer.
The industry was going through some things, but I don't think we would have saw the last of him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think he would have been reinvented over and over, similar to like Ron Isley, and he may go away, but he would never go too far away.
Woman with a job. I need a woman with her own crib. I need a woman with a ride. I need a woman with no kids. If you know what I'm talking about and feeling you're the one, then go on, girl, submit your application. I'm tired of fussing and crying and stressing. I didn't want
Yeah, Application. It was not even a single, but it was, I don't know, it was just really cool. It just started off the G album, and the album never stopped.
Great singer, naturally gifted. You know, his dad. He definitely got the genes of his dad, and a great performer. He was definitely put everything he had into his performances, everything he had into, singing. Just always want to, put, how should I say, best foot forward. And doing, making the fans and the crowd happy. But I mean, definitely he was a good singer, no doubt about it.
I recall when we first met a long time ago. How could I forget the way I felt when I first laid eyes on you? I remember saying to my friends, there is my future wife, and then I took the step to meet someone who would change my life.
I Was Made to Love You. I think it's a great song. It's
nice.
One of my top 10 songs of all time.
To my heart, to my car, to my crib, my kids, everything.
My favorite album from Gerald Levert is Love and Consequences, because it's something about albums that are orchestrated and done while they're going through some things. And of course, just like Mary J. Blige with the My Life album, Gerald Levert was going through some things during the Love and Consequences album. Enough said.
Don't ever doubt my love, 'cause it's true. Baby, hold on to me. See, I'm a special kind. Man, that is hard to find. Told you 1,000 times. Baby, hold on to me. Oh, baby, hold on to me. See, I'm a special kind. Man, that is hard to find. Told you 1,000 times. Baby, hold on to me. Baby, hold on.
Baby, Hold On to Me with Eddie Levert. Need I say more? I think it's one of the greatest male duets ever. And they really, they effortlessly, you don't know who was the best out of that duet. They both were equally incredible on that song. That song could have went for 10 more minutes. Right, and Gerald Levert and Eddie Levert, their father and son, but they both sound like each other, but they both don't try to sound like each other. They sound like father and son. That's the beautiful part.
I'll Give Anything is not written by him. It was Dave Foster's song. But as an interpretation, I think he kind of rocked it. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of the R&B Teddy Bears. I'm your host, Tom Gouker, and you are listening to Something Came from Baltimore. Please go on to Facebook, follow my guests, Kelly Bell, Ed Turner, Darnell Miller, Vanessa Collier, Lafayette Gilchrist, the Funk Master, Duke Benjamin. This was such a pleasure to work on, and we're not done yet. Let's listen to some of my favorite Gerald Levert songs. Expect some deep cuts and enjoy. Just remember a time when Gerald Levert was on the radio and was a superstar. Episode 2 of the R&B Teddy Bears, Marvin Gaye.